Run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run. Run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run. As a child we had fun down on the banks of the 4 mile run, playing on the banks of the 4 mile run. Run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run 4 mile.
You know, this is 606 East Columbia Street. And I know these trees very well around this house because I drove by here once 18 years ago. I had a suspicion that this was the house that I grew up in. Now, if you don't know who I am, I'm Jim Fowler. In fact, I was talking to an audience today, and almost everybody over 30 years old remembered Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. I hope you remember it too. It's great that we had a family-oriented program in those days. And almost everywhere I go, I usually have an animal with me. I have nothing here today because I'm here to look back for the first time to some of my early days when I grew up here in Falls Church. You know, I left this area in 1946. I've only been back through here once. I can't help reminiscing too about the way 4 Mile Run used to be.
The Chesapeake, a great American bay that feeds the Atlantic Ocean. The Potomac, one of the great rivers that feeds the Chesapeake Bay. And 4 Mile Run, one of the many streams that feeds the Potomac. 4 Mile Run begins at high points overlooking our nation's capital. It merges with the Potomac within view of the Washington Monument. The way 4 Mile Run used to be, before humans became the primary predatory animal that changed the stream's course and its sources, before humans changed its chemistry and biology, before buildings, before pavement, before storm drains, before leaking and overflowing sanitary sewer lines, before railroads and automobiles, before lawns, pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, and thousands of other human man-made toxic substances made their way into the stream. 4 Mile Run was formed out of the powerful shifting of rock formations. During Northern Virginia's early geological upheavals, compressive forces caused a folding of rock layers along a border going through what is now Tyson's Corner and Miner Hill. It formed a ridge of the highest ground in the area. Fractures formed at almost right angles to the ridge. They were created from the expansion of the rock behind the folding of the ridge. Underground water gushed up to the top of these fractures on Miner Hill and then flowed downhill, southeast, toward the coastal plain along the twisting fracture line. This fracture line became the stream bed course for 4 Mile Run.
Huffman Falls marks the fall line in this area on 4 Mile Run. The fall line is the point where the crystalline rocks that we've been looking at from the north dive beneath the coastal plain sediments. From this point downstream, the course of 4 Mile Run will no longer be controlled by the joints and fractures that have controlled it up to this point. It'll be running on top of the coastal plain sediments, the Potomac Formation, which, as we've said, is 100 million years old.
Following the last ice age, the course and conditions of 4 Mile Run became influenced by the actions of life forms. While the largest animals of the 4 Mile Run Valley included the bison, bear, cougar, and wolves, the course of 4 Mile Run and its whole ecosystem was most affected by the beaver.
Ecologists refer to the beaver as a keystone species, a species that has the dominant effect in any ecosystem. Now, in this kind of topography, where you have a fairly broad, flat park within a hilly area, we can suspect that it was caused by beaver, who over time had a whole network of dams that would have slowly filled in, creating a network of meadows behind it.
The primeval streamside forest protected the stream and provided it with rich nutrients to support a healthy diversity of life forms. The trees were mostly gigantic oaks and hickories, but contained countless other species that evolved to survive in this environment. The first peoples who arrived at 4 Mile Run many thousands of years ago had little impact on the stream. The stream, however, provided them with food and tools for living in ways lost long before our modern lifestyles.
In prehistoric times, which we think in Virginia now, the dates are probably something in the order of about 12,000, 13,000 years ago. Some dates a little bit older. These people coming into areas had to have some kind of rock to do making their axes, knives, drills, things like that with. This spot in the spring attracted all the anadromous fish. Anadromous are fish that live in salt water but need to spawn in fresh water, very similar to the West Coast salmon. But on the East Coast here, we have herring, we have different shads like American shad and hickory shad, and the sturgeon. Groups of Indians would come from several hundred miles to fall line sites to process all of the roe, the caviar if it's sturgeon, or roe if they're shad, and get the flesh to smoke it down and dry it, and have one heck of a big picnic.
Proudfoot Falls is another location that attracted early human visitors. The falls is located where Ohio Street now crosses Route 66 in Arlington. It was named for Samuel Proudfoot. In the 1880s, Proudfoot discovered a quarry there that had been used for thousands of years by early humans.
This little spot is the base of a soapstone outcrop. It looks a lot like all the rest of the rock, but it's soft and it can take a tremendous amount of heat, so it makes a good cooking vessel. The Indians would come up in this area and other quarries. They'd go after the local country rock, which could be carved into what looks like a pottery bowl. Some of these pots are huge in size. Some have been found large enough to, cook a large dog in it.
In 1608, everything around 4 Mile Run began to change when John Smith and his crew sailed up the Potomac. It's believed he gave the stream its name, marking its mouth at 4 miles north of the mouth of Great Hunting Creek. Trappers and traders followed in the 1630s, and by 1650 they had slaughtered essentially all of the beaver along the stream. The diverse stream habitat, with its terracing ponds and superb flood control systems created by the beaver over thousands of years, was ruined within one 20-year period. 4 Mile Run became important to Europeans as a dividing line and survey mark for early land grants and deeds. One rock formation along the stream, called Brandymore Castle, became a primary survey point for land ownership. European settlers moved in, taking land from the indigenous tribes. The Europeans cleared the oak hickory forests and planted tobacco. Everything changed almost instantly. The rains, instead of slowly dripping through the forest canopy of leaves and branches and seeping into the soil as it had for thousands of years, now forcefully struck the loose, unprotected topsoil. Within a few years, the watershed's rich black topsoil that took thousands of years to create was washed down 4 Mile Run into the Potomac River. The lifeless underlying red clay associated with today's Northern Virginia topsoil was exposed for the first time. By the 1700s, mills and mill races were constructed along 4 Mile Run. Unlike beaver dams, the mills did not create life-enriching habitats. Early roads were built in the area to connect towns with local mills along 4 Mile Run. Bridges with their stream bank damaging foundations became commonplace. Humans, for the first time, became the pivotal and dominant animal along 4 Mile Run, leaving no keystone species that creates habitats for other life forms. As the forests were destroyed, the level of the stream in dry weather dropped significantly. The fish population diminished, while flood levels during rainstorms increased to levels previously unknown. The eroded soil from the cleared lands washed into the stream and changed water quality, and the amount of sediment that settled into the stream bed suffocated life in the stream. Stream bank erosion that would normally take hundreds of years was accelerated to just a few years. Before the Civil War, 4 Mile Run was navigable by boat up to what is now Columbia Pike, just below Huffman Falls. In 1836, George Washington Parke Custis built the Arlington Mill, which remained productive until its destruction during the Civil War. 5 other grist mills were also active along 4 Mile Run and its tributaries during this time. In 1880, Dr. John Barcroft built a mill at the same site and named it Barcroft Mill. He used a 36-foot mill wheel, said to be the largest on the East Coast. All of these mills served a primary role in the industrial base of the region and deeply affected 4 Mile Run's physical and chemical qualities. By the mid-1800s, the steam-driven railroad dominated transportation around Washington, D.C. Southern Railroad purchased the 4 Mile Run streambed in 1853 because it provided the most level western route out of the Potomac River Valley. 4 Mile Run also provided a reliable source of water to feed and cool the steam engines. To construct the railway bed in the narrow stream valley, rock embankments and stream beds were blown up with dynamite. Elevated railway beds were raised high above the floodplain floor. Bridge after bridge was built out of imported red sandstone every time the straight tracks crossed over the ever-twisting 4 Mile Run. Each bridge further degraded the stream. Floodplain soils were compacted, and natural streambed rock was often replaced with construction debris. The railroad created booming trade and population growth at each of its many stops along the stream. Most train stops had a post office, general store, other businesses, and an increasing number of houses for Washington bureaucrats who would commute to work by train. Roads had to be built to connect everyone, and countless bridges were built to cross over 4 Mile Run. Then the Civil War came to the 4 Mile Run Valley. It was the primary route west out of the nation's capital. Protecting the railroad along the stream valley was a top military priority. The first land battles of the Civil War were fought in the 4 Mile Run watershed near what is now Seven Corners. Almost every tree was cut down to avoid giving the Confederates a place to hide and ambush a train or sneak into the capital. Soldiers camped throughout the watershed. At one point, so many soldiers were bathing in the stream that trains had to be shut down. There were so many soap suds from bathing soldiers in 4 Mile Run that steam engines were blowing bubbles out of their stacks. 4 Mile Run barely had time to recover from the war when it became known as a recreational mecca for Washingtonians. The enterprising Carlin family developed the springs next to their 4 Mile Run train stop into a picnic and excursion resort. It quickly became popular with families from Washington who would come out on the train for the day. They'd swim in the swimming hole, eat ice cream at a restaurant pavilion, and enjoy the large dance pavilion. Large church and political gatherings were held there regularly. Later, in 1904, 4 Mile Run again became a recreational destination when the Washington, Alexandria, and Mount Vernon Railroad built a 40-acre amusement park along the north bank of 4 Mile Run in Arlandria. Luna Park was billed as unquestionably the grandest and most complete amusement and recreative place between the great ocean resorts. By World War I, the population around 4 Mile Run had grown dramatically. Instead of providing recreational enjoyment, the stream now became used as a free sewer system for the burgeoning population. Citizens, businesses, and private garbage haulers threw their trash into the stream or along the stream bank to be washed away during the next storm. Sewer pipes were built to flow directly from homes and businesses into 4 Mile Run without any treatment. This 1949 Isaac Walton League film reveals the garbage dumps along the shores of 4 Mile Run in Arlandria. It also shows the methane and raw sewage bubbling up from the stream bed. Industrial plants were also located along the streams and rivers as a source of cheap cooling and easy disposal system for hazardous waste. Without any regulations, anybody with a pipe could pump anything they wanted into 4 Mile Run, and they did. This practice continued until federal laws forced treatment of sewage before it was pumped into the stream and dumping of hazardous materials or garbage directly into the stream. Over the past 300 years, probably nothing, not the eradication of the beaver, not the deforestation of the whole watershed, not the building of the railroad or dumping of raw sewage and toxins into the stream, has had such a long-term damaging impact on 4 Mile Run as the automobile. Hundreds of thousands of vehicles and machines leaking oil and other chemicals, hundreds of miles of roads, thousands of paved parking lots and driveways, and thousands of buildings which serve vehicles have overrun the 4 Mile Run watershed during the past 100 years. In the 1940s, local jurisdictions began building storm drains to carry rainwater from paved roads and parking lots through underground pipes to quickly flow untreated into 4 Mile Run or one of its tributaries. The pavement collected and transported all rainwater and kept it from soaking into the ground. The rainwater and everything that leaked or was discarded onto the pavement was delivered to the storm drains and instantly delivered to 4 Mile Run. This new situation created instant flooding of previously unknown magnitude, even greater than the flooding that followed the deforestation in the 1700s. Engineers decided that the only way to resolve this new self-inflicted predicament would be to redesign and carve 4 Mile Run into a deep, wide, and straight channel to transport the floodwaters toward the Potomac even faster. The channelization project was commissioned in Arlandria in the 1970s. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers dug a long, straight channel through the last half mile of 4 Mile Run before it entered the Potomac next to National Airport. The project was called a success. It relieved the regular human-caused flooding. The channelization unfortunately further corrupted the water quality of the stream and the life it supported. One resulting bright spot for 4 Mile Run was the required formation of an oversight agency for the stream, the Northern Virginia Regional Commission. Although initially commissioned by this project only to prevent further flooding along 4 Mile Run, it has since become the principal governmental advocate for reviving the stream and its watershed. As the era of stormwater pipelines and channelization was causing the final breakdown of life in 4 Mile Run, there was a gradual awakening of the need to preserve the stream. Arlington County took the lead in purchasing land around 4 Mile Run, such as Carlin Springs, and turning it into parkland. And when the final railroad company that owned tracks along 4 Mile Run decided to sell out in the 1960s, the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority led the effort to purchase this long, thin stretch of environmentally sensitive land. While pavement and bridges still pervade this stretch of land, the Park Authority has been working toward reviving this precarious stream valley. Before 1608, the human population in the 4 Mile Run watershed rarely exceeded 100 people. By the year 2000, the human population of the watershed was measured in hundreds of thousands. Gone were the bison, the bear, the wolves, the cougar, the beaver, and hundreds of species that dominated the watershed just 300 years ago. In the late 1980s, coordinated citizen efforts to revive 4 Mile Run began in Falls Church in Arlington to stop further stream channelization and building in floodplains. While losing almost every battle, the citizens convinced both jurisdictions to develop watershed management plans. The goal of these plans is to begin the journey of reviving 4 Mile Run to the way it used to be.
One thing I remember is 4 Mile Run down the road here, right in front of the house. The minute I got out of Madison High School, I used to hike that down to the creek, and I'd sit around watching the few fish that were there, but also trying to catch frogs. Remind me of a few of the places on the Zambezi River that was full of crocodiles. Little did I know that some of my training here along these creeks would prepare me for some of the things I was able to do later in life.
Stream life struggles to revive in this harsh urban environment, and these spots where life struggles along the stream are the places that people seem to cherish most.
This streamside vegetation is very important for slowing down stormwater runoff, taking up nutrients and pollutants that would otherwise reach the stream, and providing cover and food source for a variety of organisms both in the stream and in the stream valley. Okay, we're going to collect some of these stream creatures that we use as indicators of water quality, these macroinvertebrates, mostly immature insects. We're going to do our primary sampling in a riffle area. What we have here is a damselfly larva. This is one of the larger macroinvertebrates we're likely to find in a stream. This one's close to mature. We can see that it's starting to show its developing wings. The three paddle-like tails at the end of the animal are its gills. That's one of the ways in which it's getting oxygen from the water. This is a pool dweller, not a riffle dweller. It has long, kind of spindly legs, which don't do well for riffle dwellers, but works very nice for an animal like this that clings to root hairs and other vegetation in a pool area. They're a very ancient group of insects. They saw the dinosaurs come and go. But just because you're ancient doesn't mean that you aren't still effective.
In the early 1990s, the City of Falls Church designated portions of Isaac Crossman Park as an urban forest stream valley demonstration project. Its purpose is the revival of stream valley life.
I'm Malcolm Scully. I've been coming to Isaac Crossman Park since 1973 when we moved to Falls Church. And over the years, I've seen almost 120 species of birds down here. One of the great places in the park here is right along the stream. If you can see, there's a dense undergrowth that comes down to the stream, which is really wonderful for the birds because the birds like to come to the water to feed, to get to drink and to bathe, but they need some cover nearby because if they don't have the cover, they'll be more exposed to predators. The canopy is very important in the spring for the warblers. When they come through, they feed up in the tops of the oak trees and the maple trees. They find small insects and mast that they feed on in the spring. And it's a wonderful time to see them because the leaves aren't fully out yet, so that you can really get a pretty good view of them. Later in the spring and in the early summer, the leaves get so thick and the warblers are so small that they're very hard to pick out. People sometimes say that they have warbler neck because they've been craning their necks so long trying to see things and haven't been able to find them. I've seen great birds down here in every season of the year. There are a whole number of year-round birds that you can see anytime you come down, probably 25 or 30 species. We see great blue herons, green herons, and I've seen once down here a beautiful small heron called a yellow-crowned night heron, which is a very southern species. This is about the northern edge of its range, so it's not rare, but it's very exciting to see one here at any rate. Over the years, I've kept a list of all the birds I've seen down here. There's a double-crested cormorant, the great blue heron, the green heron, yellow-crowned night heron, tundra swan, Canada goose, mallard.
We've been walking through this park for 20 years and more now. One of the interesting things is, and there's lots of background noise here, but particularly if we get up early enough in the morning to walk down here, with all the foliage, there are places in this park where you can't see the houses. If it weren't for all the urban noises, you'd think you were someplace far away. There's an incredible feeling of privacy, even though it's somewhat illusory. But it's there. It's part of this setting. It's something that gives you a sense of calm.
Wherever native Virginia plants flourish, 4 Mile Run becomes a favorite place for stream visitors. The Potomac chapter of the Virginia Native Plant Society provides tours, workshops, and planting parties along 4 Mile Run. The Society trains citizens to identify and enjoy the native flowers, ferns, shrubs, and trees that have evolved over the millennia in the stream valley. For some, finding rocks becomes the prime reason to visit 4 Mile Run. While no one pans for gold anymore like they used to above Huffman Falls, budding geologists love to come to one of the few remaining places where they can enjoy rock formations or search for unusual loose rocks.
I'm Avery Drake, a scientist emeritus of the U.S. Geological Survey. In 1974 to 76, had the privilege of studying the geology of Fairfax County and making a geologic map of the county. Part of that mapping project was in 4 Mile Run. There are a number of different rocks along the trend of 4 Mile Run. 3 of those are present here in this part of the run. The major rock here is the Sykesville Formation, which is a rock composed of plagioclase and quartz and a certain amount of mica. It is typically characterized by what I call quartz eyes or quartz knots, which are the white circular type of things you see on the outcrop. Another major rock type along 4 Mile Run is the Lake Barcroft metasandstone, which is an older rock than the Sykesville, and another rock which we don't have here, the Indian Run. It is, was deformed prior to the deposition of the Sykesville Formation. Other rocks present are quartz bodies. There's quartz bodies and veins all through the Piedmont, which have been formed, released from the rocks by metamorphism. So the quartz is everywhere through the Piedmont. There are blocks of it all along the stream here.
For the past few years, Arlington resident John Robinette has been photographing and developing annual calendars of 4 Mile Run with Arlingtonians for a Clean Environment. He's been one of the foremost promoters of the stream's special places.
I guess like many people in the area, my introduction to 4 Mile Run came through the bike paths that run alongside 4 Mile Run, up and down. And my introduction, like so many, came from jogging by and riding my bike by and just assuming that the stream itself was sort of secondary to the park itself. And over time, having jogged by the same areas over and over again, I started to take more notice of the streams and how beautiful the stream was itself and how much we could do to help preserve the streams. And that's how my involvement with ACE began.
The trail passes over bridges, under bridges, by swamps, meadows, waterfalls, forests, and through parks. It meets the upstream portion of 4 Mile Run at Little Falls Street in Falls Church. It hugs close to the stream through Arlington, down to the large engineered channel in Arlandria. A boat ride down 4 Mile Run offers the unique experience of catching the whitewater flowing out of the water treatment plant, or the eerie feeling of quietly floating under the 8 massive cement bridges around Route 1, or the wonderful expanse of the final reach of 4 Mile Run as it passes Reagan National Airport and widens and merges with the Potomac River.
The new messages for this century have a lot to do with not only talking about what's in it for us, but discovering and becoming identified and knowledgeable about something called the basic laws of nature that affect and support life on Earth. 4 Mile Run is an example of one of the laws of nature. One of the very obvious ones is the way water runs off of the surface of this Earth. We've had a lot of floods lately. In fact, the country of Italy were one of the few countries that admitted that their devastating floods were caused by cutting the forests on the slopes. These streams are our arteries, the arteries of this world, this planet. We've got to be very careful before we change the courses, before we channelize streams, because it affects everybody downstream. Water that falls down in the form of rain is absorbed in the wetlands. It goes down into the underground water system. We humans depend upon water. If we let all that run off and cause soil erosion and go into the deltas of our rivers, it's not going to do us a whole lot of good. So what starts right here at 4 Mile Run eventually affects everything on this part of the planet.
4 Mile Run drains a 20 square mile area in Northern Virginia. This area is called the 4 Mile Run watershed. The stream is 9 miles long, no longer the natural stream that evolved over millennia, no longer replenishing groundwater or controlling flooding with countless terraced beaver ponds, no longer controlling soil erosion with its meandering course and surrounding deep forest, no longer filtering and purifying its water by having plenty of whitewater rapids and diverse aquatic life forms. Instead, 4 Mile Run now serves as a rapid response storm drain system. 40%, or 8 of the 20 square miles in the watershed, is paved or covered with buildings. Most of 4 Mile Run's stormwater runoff comes from pavement and asphalt shingle roofing. Most of the remaining stormwater flows off lawns and construction sites. Within its 20 square miles, the 4 Mile Run watershed contains over 9,000 storm drain entry points. Into these 9,000 entry points, rainwater mixed with pollutants, sediments, and litter enters a 260-mile subterranean system of storm drain pipes. These 260 miles of underground pipes deliver the fluid mix it receives, unmonitored and unfiltered, directly at high speeds into 300 feeder pipes. These pipes dump the raging polluted stormwater directly into the stream channel. This extreme amount of runoff flushing into 4 Mile Run during rainfalls is the stream's single greatest problem.
Development here exploded during the post-World War II period from the late 1940s through the 1960s. And in those days, stormwater management meant put any source of small natural drainage into a pipe underground, maximize the number of buildable house lots. The result is flash flooding, which means that flood events are quicker and much more intense than they would be naturally, even as they occur more frequently. Before modern times, a half an inch of rain falling over this watershed would have generated a stream flow of a few hundred cubic feet per second. Today, that same modest amount of rainfall would cause the stream flow to spike up to a few thousand cubic feet per second. I've personally stood right here and watched 4 Mile Run rise over 4 feet in a 15-minute period during a regular garden variety storm.
Sediment and silt are delivered to the stream bed primarily by the storm drain system. Much of the sediment is washed off roads, driveways, parking lots, and roofs. Normally, airborne particles fall on soil and become a natural additive. In an urban watershed, airborne sediment settles on pavement or rooftops and is washed away by rain into a storm drain. A second sediment source is bare dirt. Rainwater washes bare dirt into storm drains. Construction sites are primary culprits. Another result of our underground stormwater system is the transport of litter that destroys habitat for small aquatic animals. In many cases, litter can kill them.
Even though this piece of litter has been dropped at the top of this ridge, half a mile from 4 Mile Run, it will more than likely end up in the stream. Every time somebody drops a piece of litter onto a sidewalk, street, or parking lot, it's as though they have tossed it directly into 4 Mile Run. 4 Mile Run is often cluttered with the discarded packaging from disposable products. When it rains, this litter floats down over the wet pavement into a storm drain. From there, it travels through dark, dank, bacteria-laden pipes. These storm drain pipes are found under streets, sidewalks, and parking lots. They're even located along backyard fences. The litter is then spit out of a pipe directly into 4 Mile Run. Unfortunately, many people have the misconception that water flowing into storm drains is treated. But stormwater in the 4 Mile Run watershed or other local streams is not treated in any way. Soap from car washing, soda from discarded cups, cans, and bottles, oil and grease from automobiles, salt placed on driveways and streets in the winter, and the ubiquitous cigarette butts thrown on the streets all make their way to pollute, congest, and destroy the plants and animals that are living in 4 Mile Run.
4 Mile Run is classified by the Commonwealth of Virginia as a 303D listed stream, unhealthy for human contact, swimming, or fishing. The culprit is E. coli. This bacteria is formed in the intestines of animals, including humans. High E. coli counts are found right at the source of 4 Mile Run, where sewer lines cross and run alongside the stream channel. Sewage breaks are discovered as this aging system deteriorates. The sewage can steadily seep into the stream or infiltrate the stream only during heavy storms and high water levels. But E. coli can enter the stormwater system from sources other than sewer lines. Many wild animals, such as raccoons, ducks, and rats, live around the stream and storm drains. There are also nearly 20,000 domesticated dogs living in the watershed.
This year, for my science fair project, I decided to find out if a nearby dog park was contaminating 4 Mile Run stream with the coliform bacteria Escherichia coli. My conclusions were that the dog park most likely is contaminating 4 Mile Run stream with Escherichia coli because one of the drainage pipes that led into 4 Mile Run stream had gram-negative rod-shaped bacteria found in it. So did the dog park.
To further test which animals are causing high E. coli counts, the Northern Virginia Regional Commission funded DNA testing of E. coli from the stream.
My name is George Simmons, and I'm on the faculty at Virginia Tech. And we're here today to collect water samples from this tributary of 4 Mile Run. And we are collecting these water samples to measure the fecal coliform density. And this particular study is important because we're interested in the density of fecal coliform bacteria that are coming out of these stormwater drains. So the problem that you have here is that a lot of these urban streams have lost their filtration capacity to remove these bacteria. For example, if you take a look at this one, you see a lot of microbial film growing along here, and you don't see a lot of the macroinvertebrates, particularly aquatic insects, on these rocks that would normally be filtering a lot of these bacteria out. The other thing that is important is that the stormwater system itself serves as an excellent habitat. The temperature itself is moderated year-round, so that it doesn't get too low or too high, so it provides an excellent environment for these bacteria to grow. The point is, when these little streams are loaded with nutrients, such as phosphorus and nitrogen, and you have an adequate source of carbon, then the rock surfaces become covered with a microbial film or slime, such as you see here, and the stream never has a chance to really recover.
The study found plenty of E. coli, but there was no one animal that could be labeled as the villain. Half of the E. coli could be identified as humans, dogs, waterfowl, or small wild animals. The study concluded the unidentified half had incubated in the storm drain system. The dark, dank underground stormwater system may therefore be the greatest villain in the E. coli mystery. Downstream, other issues are at play. Everything dumped down drains and toilets into the sewer system is drained into the Arlington Wastewater Treatment Plant in Arlandria. The water is filtered, settled, and chemically treated, so the water leaving the plant is generally cleaner than the water in the stormwater system. But during large storms, both the stormwater and sanitary sewer system are overwhelmed. The waters can combine. Untreated wastewater may flow into 4 Mile Run. Even during normal flows, antibiotics and other medicines flushed down toilets and drains and homes cannot be treated. Those chemicals flow into 4 Mile Run, the Potomac River, the Chesapeake Bay, and the Atlantic Ocean. In addition, hundreds of pollutants enter 4 Mile Run from 260 miles of storm drain pipes. They are costly and nearly impossible to track through the storm drain system to their source. They are called non-point source pollutants. A major obstacle to reviving 4 Mile Run is that development goals and the needs of neighboring landowners are often given a higher priority than the need for healthy water quality. 4 Mile Run streambed has been radically altered right up to its source.
Geology controls so much of our development, so much of our everyday lives. We're close to the source of 4 Mile Run. close because we can't see it anymore. It's buried under all this development that you can see behind us here. So we can't see the actual springs. In an urban area such as this, that's so highly developed, most of the outcrops, most of the exposures of the rocks are in building excavations, road excavations, and in the stream valleys. What we've done in so many cases is channelize the streams, we've cemented the streams, we've put them in storm sewers, we've buried them, so we no longer can see the geology along those stream valleys. So it's very important to maintain some of these natural exposures so that the geologists can have something to work with, to understand the area, to help the planners, to help the zoning boards, to help the developers, to know what they're working with, to know what the problems might be, to know what would be the best type of development for that area.
Immediately downstream are 1950-era townhouses built in the floodplain. The stream was piped underground. Removing these disaster-prone homes from the floodplain and reopening the stream has never been given serious consideration. Downstream, stream banks have been bulldozed, straightened, barricaded with rocks, and forced into cement culverts. These efforts keep stormwater trapped and traveling at high speeds through a deep channel. The channel allows new development to be built in the former floodplain. Invasive exotic plants also threaten 4 Mile Run.
I'm standing alongside 4 Mile Run near the intersection of Ohio and 66 in Arlington. Around me are native trees, most notably the sycamore tree, which frequently grows along riverside banks. The sycamore tree is being covered by porcelainberry, an invasive exotic vine that people formerly grew in their gardens but has now escaped into the wild. It's slowly making its way up the tree branches and will eventually engulf the tree. This will cause the death of the tree. Not only the death of the tree, but to species that use the tree, such as neotropical migrants like the Baltimore oriole and the catbird. Another major threat to native plants and native plant habitat is English ivy. English ivy is commonly grown in gardens, but once it escapes into the wild, it engulfs trees, it engulfs everything on the ground and anything else in its path. Behind me you can see a silver maple tree that is being smothered by the English ivy. It's threatening the very life of the stream.
We looked at these streams to do certain things, to handle waste, to deal with floodwaters. In some cases, this stream has really been treated like the concrete types of infrastructure. And as a result, down in this lower section, we're seeing the impact of all the communities upriver using this to channel their wastewater, to channel their stormwater, in some cases to carry away their trash. And unfortunately, this tidal portion catches a lot of that, and it's a lot to ask of a small stream to try to handle all those problems.
The other thing that I'm interested in talking about is how it affects a human's mind, a child, when they're growing up, when they're not exposed to something they can become passionate about. I became passionate about the natural world because of living right here in Falls Church. We have to create some passion about going out and enjoying outdoor activities. If we do not have lives that we find it's exciting to go out and do bird watching, walk along a creek, our life and the life of our children are going to suffer if we lose that connection with the natural world. So from almost every standpoint I know, politically, it's important that we learn to respect nature and the laws of nature that govern us. So don't think for a moment that how you treat Falls Church and 4 Mile Run is not critical to our social welfare. Instead of being at the bottom of our political agenda, it should be up somewhere near the top.
Four Mile Run flows within the Commonwealth of Virginia and is subject to its environmental regulations. But it passes through 4 local jurisdictions, Fairfax and Arlington counties, and the cities of Falls Church and Alexandria. Differing levels of knowledge and skills, as well as biases and politics, affect enforcement decisions within each jurisdiction. State and regional agencies are critical in helping guide diverse political agendas to conform with the Federal Clean Water Act and the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance. One common approach is to encourage more citizen participation.
It's very important that we bring people to 4 Mile Run today because they need the contact with it, they need to know what it's all about. And the public agencies such as ours need to have the involvement of the average citizens in the preservation and conservation of this creek. They need to get involved because we can't do it alone. The more people will help us support our efforts to keep the creek clean and the area around it, the better chance the creek has of staying in a more natural state.
Significant action is also driven by private citizens without direct government support. And each jurisdiction is well represented with citizen action groups. Fairfax County accounts for only 11% of the land in the 4 Mile Run watershed, yet it contains most of the stream's headwater area.
We're standing in an area that looks very natural and secluded, but we're actually only yards from Interstate 66, the metro, and surrounding development. We think that the health of the headwaters is critical to the health of 4 Mile Run downstream, and most of the problems with 4 Mile Run begin in the headwaters area. The McLean Land Conservancy has started a fundraising campaign to try to preserve this land and protect it for future generations.
The headwaters are the last stream segment needed to complete public ownership of 4 Mile Run. Some floodplain portions owned by the government are unfortunately in need of help. One such area surrounds a 4 Mile Run tributary. Long Branch begins in Fairfax County on Munson Hill near Seven Corners. Serious erosion, water quality, and flooding problems have developed since shopping centers and high-density residential buildings were built along Route 7. In this case, there is full political support to revive the stream.
Our plan for Long Branch tributary of 4 Mile Run here in Glen Forest is to reestablish the stream bed where it's supposed to be, cutting back the banks, providing a floodplain, and improving the habitat for wildlife and for native plants, and also for much needed flood control. A little farther up Long Branch, the fix for the problems of erosion was to concrete the culvert. And now we have a concrete sluice running through backyards. That's not the fix for this area.
In 1990, a 115-year-old civic group, the Falls Church Village Preservation and Improvement Society, began encouraging stream restoration techniques that would improve water quality and habitat. A primary goal has been to daylight or open up portions of 4 Mile Run previously piped underground in storm drains.
We're here this morning right between Arlington and Falls Church City by Fire Station number 6, where we're opening up 4 Mile Run. And that really is an important step for the city. It's a very progressive environmental step for reclaiming, if you will, some of the original 4 Mile Run, putting it back to the way it was before it was undergrounded and tubed, if you will. There's a number of very good, sound reasons for doing this. First of all, it's environmentally sound. We'll have a much more open and aesthetically appropriate stream to look at when people come to and from the city. And also it provides daylight to what had formerly been covered up portions of the stream, which then does a better job of killing bacteria. And we found out that covered portions of the stream actually breed bacteria. So it's a very positive step in that regard. And we're very pleased that it's the final portion of our project here with the fire station for the jurisdictions of Falls Church City and Arlington County. And it's been a very great project between the two jurisdictions.
Another decade-long project of the Village Preservation and Improvement Society was naming 4 Mile Run tributaries that had been placed into storm drains. By studying old maps and historic documents and interviewing senior citizens who remembered the area before the 1940s, the Society discovered where spring-fed tributaries used to be. Official historic names were given to the submerged and forgotten tributaries. The next step is to daylight one of those tributaries.
I'm standing here at the remnants of an outfall that drains the historic Harrison Branch that discharges into 4 Mile Run. As you can see, that the outfall has been deteriorated over the years, and my goal is to daylight a portion of this storm drain and return it to its natural condition for the purpose of providing habitat, enhancing the aesthetic value of this park, and increasing the water quality benefits. Part of the reason why we want to daylight this storm drain is to decrease the velocities of the runoff before it enters 4 Mile Run. This is beneficial because when we have higher velocities that result from water coming directly out of the storm drains, erosion is prevalent. If we can create a natural channel with natural fluvial structures, riffles, and pools, the velocity will be diminished as it enters into 4 Mile Run.
Calculations by the Northern Virginia Regional Commission indicate that even this small daylighting project will reduce downstream flooding by a measurable amount. With over 300 storm drain outfalls into 4 Mile Run, and most on public land, daylighting storm drains is becoming an attractive option for reducing flooding and improving water quality. Arlington County represents 70% of the watershed. 2 Arlington County civic groups have effectively pushed the political agenda. Arlingtonians for a Clean Environment has led the effort to educate the public on the problems and the virtues of 4 Mile Run. The League of Women Voters of Arlington County has performed studies and lobbied governments to improve water quality in 4 Mile Run. As a result, Arlington County now has one of the most progressive stream restoration policies in the country.
About a year ago, the county adopted a policy which encourages developers to use green technology in their buildings. Green technology will give us environmentally friendly buildings. A major goal in Arlington County is restoring the 4 Mile Run area. We strongly believe that our green technology program is a major contributing factor in this effort. The county uses the U.S. Green Building Council's rating system for green buildings. It's called the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, or LEED. LEED allows the builder to evaluate and certify the environmental performance of a building at one of 4 certification levels.
Innovative programs are only possible if experienced professionals are available to implement the plans. Until recently, few engineers or architects had any biological background. Without knowledgeable professional contractors, well-intentioned political agendas were meaningless once construction began. This trend is reversing.
I'm Katrine Scholzbart with the HOK Planning Group here in Washington, D.C., where we try to bring green roof technology to North America. We'd like to green roof surfaces, particularly those for large shopping malls and schools and office and apartment buildings that take up a lot of impervious surface area and do not allow water to infiltrate into the ground. Green roof technology is an alternative for stormwater management in heavily urbanized areas because all roof surface areas are covered with a thin soil and vegetation layer that absorbs water during a rainstorm. When it rains, the soil and water slowly absorb the rain, and only after the saturation level is reached, water is going to run off into the storm sewer. The benefits of green roof technologies are thus it reduces stormwater runoff, it delays runoff, and it reduces the sediment and nutrients that are going to be carried otherwise into the watershed.
Roofs of buildings cover about 10% of the watershed. Controlling the amount of stormwater that flows off rooftops into 4 Mile Run is becoming a high priority. In addition to green roofs, above-ground rainwater cisterns are being rediscovered as effective systems to catch rooftop rainwater runoff. The cisterns prevent water from entering the storm drain system and provide chlorine-free water for landscaping. Where cisterns are not feasible, rain gardens are gaining popularity for controlling rooftop runoff. Hard clay is removed and a 4-foot layer of absorbent soil is deposited in landscaping areas. Native shrubs and trees which can absorb soil moisture in their roots are then planted. Rooftop runoff can then be diverted to these rain gardens. The specialized plants absorb and filter water from the soil and release it into the air. This natural, self-contained water purification and flood prevention system is both inexpensive and beautiful. An even more simple catchment technique is to substitute multiple layers of native vegetation for lawns. Less rainwater will run off, and no toxic herbicides or pesticides are needed. The city of Alexandria is located at the downstream end of 4 Mile Run. While it represents only 15% of 4 Mile Run's human population, it receives the brunt of all the upstream abuses of its neighbors.
Behind me is 4 Mile Run, which borders not only the city of Alexandria, but Arlington County. What we'd like to do in the future is to build boardwalks, create the possibility so that citizens can come down, experience the stream, learn more about the stream, gain access to the stream, and enjoy what is really a natural resource here in the city of Alexandria. We also want to control the naturally occurring pollutants in the stream in order to protect its environmental integrity by planting natural grass and vegetation that will control and protect the stream in the future.
The federal government has played a leading role toward reviving 4 Mile Run through its enforcement of the Clean Water Act. Interpretations about how to comply with federal flood insurance laws, however, have often hindered the gains made through the Clean Water Act.
About 30 years ago, there were a couple catastrophic floods in the northern part of Alexandria called Arlandria. And as a result, the Army Corps of Engineers came in. They turned 4 Mile Run into pretty much a drainage ditch to empty into the Potomac. But the planning effort that we have begun will see 4 Mile Run for a much greater purpose, more consistent with its original function of providing the natural ecological systems that not only provided water and food to the original Native Americans, but now is going to provide tremendous aesthetic, almost spiritual enrichment to the people who recognize how beautiful a natural stream waterway that this can and should be.
4 Mile Run doesn't look or act as it did 60 years ago when Jim Fowler caught frogs there. But the political agenda is changing. And maybe, someday, if enough citizens care and take action, 4 Mile Run will be revived to the way it used to be.
Well, Thomas Wolfe said perhaps that you can't come home. Well, I've come home here today. I hope that the day never comes when we can't have our children and our families enjoying the natural systems along a creek like this. Very important to our community, so I want to come back again and see what's going to happen in the future.
Run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run. Run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run. As a child we had fun down on the banks of the 4 Mile Run, playing on the banks of the 4 Mile Run. Run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run. Run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run. Muskrat sleeping in the sun, playing on the banks of the 4 Mile Run, home for the critters of the 4 Mile Run. Run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run. Run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run 4 mile, run. Well, I hope my daughters and my son can take their kids down to 4 Mile Run, play on the banks of the 4 Mile Run. Run 4 Mile, run 4 Mile, run 4 Mile Run. Run 4 Mile, run 4 Mile, run 4 Mile Run. Run 4